When I look at the city from my point of view, I see New York City as a great big sculpture.
The camera is no more an instrument of preservation. The image is.
Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 191 for the middle of September 2023. And yes, I already have a tree turning colors on my street. So
oh yeah, started here too. Our hedge in the front yard.
Yeah, so
Cotoneaster turns beautiful red.
We're in the fall. Anyway, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well.
Yeah?
Really well. Yeah. Working.
Yeah.
Had a good weekend.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm doing whatever I'm doing. It's just hard to know. Anyway, we'll get right into this. Our shows are a rather long one. Today we have
James and Karla Murray,
James and Karla Murray. We're going to be talking to these New York photographers about what?
About a book that's upcoming called Storefront NYC.
Yeah, from Prestel.
Yeah.
And we are going to have quite a conversation with them. So we're going to keep this opening rather short because it's quite an involved discussion with
lots of stories, lots of enthusiasm, and it was fantastic to talk to them.
And lots of New York. So,
lots of New York. I was very quiet.
You were very quiet, and I wasn't. Well, actually, maybe I was too. So, anyway, let's get into our discussion with James and Karla Murray. I just want to welcome James and Karla Murray to Street Shots. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's really great. We got your book sent to us from Prestel. Sarah sent us your book and then asked, would we want you to be on the show? And we're like, yes, I definitely want you guys on the show. And I'm really, really happy that you guys can spend some time with us. It's a pleasure and an honor. So,
excellent.
Thank you.
So, Ward, we're gonna do the table tennis questions here between the two of us. So
yeah. First of all, I love this book. I'm so glad I have it. I made my first visit / pilgrimage to New York in October 2022 to visit Antonio and to do those first street walks up and down Broadway and Fifth. And I have a much better appreciation now for the city. And so some of these places that we walk by or are very close to, I just want to say I really love the book. We'll just put it that way. So let's start from the beginning. What's your origin story? What made you interested in this particular subject to start out?
Well, James and I were always photographing the streets of New York, but the reason we became, I guess you could say, entranced with these mom and pop storefronts, because that's what we like to call them, the mom and pop shops, is really because of their signage. We had been documenting the streets for a graffiti project that we were working on. And graffiti being a letter-based art form, it's all about how you manipulate the lettering style, like your tag, which is what you would write your name. It's called your tag. And it's all about manipulating the letters and coming up with an interesting way, an eye-catching way of presenting it. So when we were walking the streets, we would always look at the signs on these mom and pop stores, whether it was a hand-painted sign in the window, whether it was a neon sign. And we would get inspired, looking at the styles. And then one day we were in Brooklyn and we were photographing a mural that had been done. And we had just came back, I guess, we had gone to that particular block maybe 3 or 4 months prior, and we had photographed the same building had this long wall, and we had photographed it a couple months prior, but when we went back to return, because we knew that the wall had been repainted, because the graffiti artist told us, they would often call us up and they'd be like, oh, hey guys, we painted that wall again. Right. Why don't you go check it out? They didn't own a camera. And this is back in the 1990s.
So this was pure film.
All 35 millimeter film. I mean, not a lot of people, had a good camera at that point, and they really appreciated that we were documenting it. So we went back, and when we were there and we were photographing the wall, we said, oh my God, what happened to that little store? We went in there, we got some candy, and
the owner.
The owner was so nice. We chatted with her for a second, had this really cool sign, like, we love this candy store.
And that was the exact moment.
And
of the project starting.
A light bulb, like, literally
wow, this is cool.
Right, went off in our head, and we're like, oh my God, it's gone. Somehow the neighborhood didn't look the same anymore. It didn't feel the same anymore.
The name of the store is Katie's Candy.
Right.
And it's on this old privilege sign is one given to the store by a company. And it's on an old Good-O Cola privilege sign. And it's hand painted, and it's all, the letters aren't spaced evenly, and they ran out of room on the right side. And
right. You can tell, like, it's somebody that had, like, no knowledge of how to paint a sign, like, a proper way.
Right.
Like, they didn't go to, like, sign painting school.
Right. And we go in there, and the woman was so nice. She was a big woman, and she had this, like, 12-pack-a-day New York voice. And she talked like a sailor, and, like, every other word was a curse word. Yeah. And she's like, what are you guys doing? And we ended up talking to her for a while. And there was, like, a cat sleeping in the Tootsie Roll dispenser area.
Right.
And she had a big reclining, like, lazy boy chair behind the counter, and her television set up for when it was quiet. And she was just such a wonderful person. And then, like Karla said, when we came back 4 months later and the store was gone, the whole block was dead.
Right. Really,
the whole block had changed.
It lost its, like, charm in a way, and it just didn't.
She looked out for the kids on the street. She took packages. She kept the street running. She was like the mayor of Thompson.
Exactly. This one store, you'd be like, oh, well, how could that possibly make a difference in the neighborhood? But it did. It really honestly did. And we had photographed it. But we had never, that was just because, like, we had felt like it. But we said to ourselves, oh my God, we really have to start documenting these places, like, for real.
Right.
And before they all disappear, because it seemed to us like, wow, it's kind of like a race against time. They would close, and then if we hadn't taken a photograph, which we regret. I mean, looking back, there's so many places we regret in our own neighborhood, on our own block. That we never thought to photograph because we took them for granted.
Yeah, you get used to it.
There's no better word for it than took them for granted. Like, we always thought they would be there. We were familiar with them. They were our go-to place, and you just got comfortable with it. And we never thought to take a photo because, that's just why, especially with film. Like, I think nowadays, like, people probably take a lot more photos because, like, who cares? Like, erase it. Like, it's just,
But to us, money was everything, and film was, like, precious.
It's expensive,
Exactly.
To take the picture and
I mean, like,
get it right.
We weren't wealthy. I mean, when James and I met, like, we were working on, like, a couple of different jobs, just to like.
But not to get
so you're native New Yorkers, then, I'm guessing, from your accent and your enthusiasm.
I am. You can tell. Yeah.
I'm originally from a place called Bridgeport, Connecticut. Which, if you look it up, it was a very, very industrial wasteland when I was born there and grew up there. Remington Arms, the factory left. GE, they had a plant there. They left. All the major factories left, and it was just a barren wasteland. And it inspired me to seek out New York City when I was early teen and hang out there.
Yeah, and then we met.
We met on this, just hanging out.
We met on the Lower East Side, and I was born in Mount Sinai in Harlem, but I grew up in the Bronx. And honestly, I wish I had taken more photos back in the day of my own neighborhood. So much has changed. But it really wasn't our own neighborhood that inspired us.
Yeah, it was these far flung.
You know, at the time when we started, James and I were already married and together when we began this project. And it was definitely not our own neighborhood that inspired us.
And it was purely aesthetically driven at first.
Right.
We just loved the aesthetics of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it comes through in the book. I mean, you go through it, and it's many of the images are almost three-dimensional. Like you standing there, it's like, you know, you have to look at them. I mean, I enjoy them a great deal.
And the Storefronts book is your third or fourth volume of Storefronts. You have at least two, right?
Right. Yes. We did.
We did two daytime ones.
Nighttime one. You did nighttime.
Right. So yeah, we have the Storefront, The Disappearing Face in New York, which the pub date was 2008, but in reality it didn't come out until January 2009. But that's a whole nother story. We could talk about all the problems we had with that. But that one is some of the photos that are in this new publication were in that book, and we'll explain the timeline. So Storefront, The Disappearing Face in New York was 2008.
Right.
And then we had a book called New York Nights, which was also like these mom and pop stores, but also bars, restaurants, theaters, like things that didn't really fit into a storefront category that we felt particularly strong to photograph at night because a lot of them had neon signs or the business was only open at night. Like it just didn't make sense to photograph it during the day because there was
was like the third part.
Right. So that was like the in-between. And then Storefront 2, A History Preserved, that is kind of like a follow-up book, I would say, to the first Storefront book, which was a daytime exterior photos. And then
this new book.
Right. Our new book, just to differentiate it, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, what's different about it? The two books that are the daytime ones, as well as the night one, they're all out of print, unfortunately. And we became friends with so many people around the world just because of our books. And so many people, like they have such fond memories, especially places that are no longer in business anymore. And they wanted to get our books, and we felt sad that they were no longer available.
The publisher wasn't capable.
Right. There was not going to be any more reprints of it. Like that was the end of the line.
A big financial shakeup, I would say.
Right. I mean, this is, like probably more information than anyone needs to know. But
and we should say, actually, the book is called Storefront NYC, right?
Photographs of cities' independent NYC. Shops. Exactly. And the reason why we felt very strongly that we wanted to have this book is we wanted to showcase some of the old favorites, like I guess you could say that maybe a lot of people have nostalgia for, that have closed, as well as ones that are still in business today, plus bring in newer photos, ones that have never been published before, highlighting even more shops. I mean, literally, I guess you could say we probably have thousands and thousands of photos of stores that have never seen the light of day, like that are on 35 millimeter film. No one's seen them except James and I, but it's an editing process. Like you can't fit everything into a book. So in our minds, like we can make lots and lots of books, but you have to find something that's, visually interesting to everybody. And, just because we like the store, maybe somebody else doesn't have a personal connection to it. So it's
taught us editing.
Right.
The first draft we turned in for our first book was like over 1,000 pages. and the publisher's like, oh, no, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, actually, sorry, speaking about nostalgia, because you're talking about, people having feelings about the book. When I open this up, of course, I'm going to flip through it. I'm a native New Yorker, so I'm looking at stuff. And one of the pictures I came across was this photograph of the Clover Deli on 34th Street and 2nd Avenue. And that's my neighborhood. I grew up around there. And in fact, a quick story about that deli is it was owned by triplets, three men who were the They were exact
Yes,
triplets,
yes.
and they would start work on different days, and I always wondered why one day the guy was nice, and the next day the guy was not so nice, and it took a while to realize that it was three different guys. And as a quick personal thing, I dated the daughter of one of the owners from that store, because I used to work around the corner at a movie theater called the Lowe's Showplace.
Oh, yeah, we
yeah,
know.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking through this, and I'm walking through it in my mind, and now I'm in Brooklyn, so I'm seeing DeFara's, which is where my wife had a history of going to DeFara's Pizzeria and stuff like that. So I'm seeing all these places and getting these personal histories of my own. And do you have any other stories of and memories tied to some of the stores that that you photographed, or even other people's memories that you want to share?
Oh, of course.
Give us a couple. Yeah.
One of the great ones that always stands out in our minds is we went to Little Italy of the Bronx, and we met the nicest guy in the world, Mike D'Oria. And this is the second generation owner of D. D'Oria Pork and Sons, and
it's in the book,
named after his father Dominic, and sons, because he had two sons, another Dominic and Mike, and they took over the family business, and they learned how to make this homemade pork sausage. And I mean, the place was amazing. You would walk in, and it was like a chandelier of sausages, sausages.
I'm 6'2". I had to crouch down to go underneath all the sausages.
Exactly. Like I'm tall, but not that tall.
So I can imagine the smell.
Mostly cleared the sausages, but James would have to duck down to talk to Mike. And it's actually one of the few photos in the book that has the owner in the photo. And
because we really fell in love with Mike in a way.
Right. When we first happened upon the store, he was outside, and he was just like leaning against the store. And like we saw it, and we're like, oh my God, this place is like, is perfect. And I asked him, can I take a photo of your store? And he's like, well, why? And I'm like, well, we love it. And he's like, okay, let me go inside. And I was like, no, you don't have to do that. He was perfect. Like, he was the store. So we said, no, please stay. We're going to take the photo. Just, do what you're doing. Don't even mind us. And we're going to just go ahead and take the photo. And then, of course, we went inside together and we tasted his amazing sausage. But when we interviewed him, because this is another thing that we would always do, when we started taking the storefront photos, we would go in and we would speak to the owners of, number one, we would always our thing was we would ask permission to photograph the store. Now, you don't necessarily have to ask somebody's permission to take a photo when you're out on the street, but we purposely did that because we wanted to set up a rapport,
right.
That way we could ask them a question or two, and we've already established that we like their store, so it kind of was like a good lead-in, I guess you could say, of asking them some more questions if they had the time.
Okay, Mike.
So Mike told us when we went inside and spoke with him, and we're noshing on his delicious sausages. Which, by the way, we had a doggy at that time, too. He was also feeding our dog sausages, who loved it. And he's like, and I was like, oh, Mike, this store is so great. Who's going to take over, when you're ready to retire? Because he was already older. And he's like, you know what? He's like, no one. He's like, I'm not the marrying type. I remember exactly what he said. He says, I'm not the marrying type, And my brother, who worked in the store with me, retired, and his kids, he has kids, but they're not interested in the business. One's a lawyer, one's a doctor, and they could care less about making these pork sausages. So he's like, when I die, the store dies with me. And James and I went home, and we honestly, we really thought about it, not just as a joke, but really, really, really thought about it. Gee, maybe we should go back to Mike and tell him to teach us.
Show us the ropes.
How to make these delicious sausages that was been in his family, like the recipe, the everything. Like he had the paprika. I mean, it was very specially flavored. He said the paprika was one of the secrets to it, but he had a couple of secrets, but he definitely with the paprika. And we ended up, of course, it wasn't a good fit for us, but we really thought about it because we felt so sad, like to hear it, like that there was nobody that was just going to take over the store. Like,
we can't let this business die.
Right. And this is before internet. Like, this is before, I think nowadays.
Yeah, Mike wasn't he's not a computer guy.
I think nowadays, like, because of social media, and we have an Instagram account, and we post these photos that we have so many people that are in the food community that are really, like, there's been a resurgence of interest in, like, with foodies and things like that, that we could possibly have found someone that maybe would want to have taken it over and carry on the tradition, if Mike agreed, of course. But,
but just spending time with him.
That's one story that sticks out just because, I mean, we honestly
thought about it.
Yeah, we honestly thought about it. We're like, okay, maybe we should learn how to make these sausages and keep the store going for him because it was so lovely. And the neighborhood is such a nice neighborhood.
And one of my favorites was Emily's Pork Store.
Mm-hmm.
They have a like 83-year-old delivery boy, and he sings Sinatra in the store. And
he still considers himself a delivery boy.
Yeah.
But
every time we go in these places, there's like a whole cast of neighborhood characters.
Another great one is
Luigi's Pizza.
And it's like, I guess you
go in there and everyone's breaking each other's chops.
Right. It's on the edge of like Park Slope / he said they came up with a new name for the community called Green, like what they say, like
Greenwood Heights or something.
Because it's not Prospect Heights, it's not Park Slope. So he's like, we're in this non-area of Fifth Avenue where it doesn't really fall in like a neighborhood community. So he's like, we'll just call it Greenwood Heights. Like he just makes up his own little name for it.
When he got the city was giving away the building.
Right. He told us like how his father bought the building, that like the neighborhood was so bad at the time that the city said, well, if you pay taxes, if you could afford the tax on the building, you can have it for like $1. Wow. Like they were just giving them away. Terrible. I mean, now the neighborhood is really expensive. Like that would be, I mean, you'd be like, oh no, that couldn't possibly be. But he was dead serious. And what stands out in my mind of talking to him is we happened to go there at like 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And we just happened upon it. He was in there like just prepping some dough and things like that.
Guy.
Giovanni, right? His name is Giovanni, and he's just like, oh God, I'm gonna make you some pizza. You're gonna have some pizza right now. And I'm like Giovanni, it's 10 o'clock in the morning.
10:15.
I'm like, I just had my coffee. I'm not ready for pizza. He's like, no, like that wasn't even like, it wasn't like okay, it was no, right. Like you're having my pizza and you're having it now. So he just makes this entire pizza for us, and we're interviewing him, and we were recording the interview, and it was one of the few times that we actually used a video camera, like one of those big giant clunky ones at the time, because this is again pre-digital. And he's looking at the camera the entire time. Like
he never once looked at the pizza the whole time. From the bowl of dough to when he took it out of the oven, he never once looked at it.
Right, he never looked down. Like he was able to make this perfect pie. He even managed to put it in the oven, like just turn it into.
And then he talks a while. And then he just takes the peel.
Right.
He's talking to Karla, and he just shoves it under the peel, opens the door to the oven with the edge of it, and he flips the thing under, throws the pizza out, cutting it. He's still talking. He never once looked at it.
Right. And there's no clock. Like, how did he know like how many minutes?
Right. And he's telling us his dad grows the herbs on Staten Island.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, as you could tell, we could go on and on and on.
Yeah, just the love that he had for this pizzeria.
I like to say every single store in the book has like this whole like rich history behind it. We get carried away talking about it for sure.
So let's get back onto photography.
Go ahead, Ward.
So like there's a very consistent getting back to the book, it has a very consistent feel, like image to image. Now, I know some of that is editing, some of it's sequencing. Do you guys have a formula or something that you do, or it's the same lens you have on the camera, whatever it is, when you approach these storefronts? Everything's very plumb and square. What do you do technique-wise in order to get that consistent look?
Well, I would definitely say you hit the nail on the head. We have a very linear approach. Yeah. When we go to photograph a store now, we can photograph it in a couple of seconds flat because we've taken so many that we know exactly like how we want to take it, what we want to do. And usually it's straight on, dead center. It's like as if you were standing there as the viewer and you could picture yourself looking at this store. That's how we wanted it to look in the camera. And right. I mean, as far as the lens,
no distractions.
Right. No distractions. I mean, for the most part, no people. That was a conscious decision we made early on. But the lens, for the most part, we did use a 28 millimeter lens, a fixed. Fixed 28 millimeter, a prime.
And occasionally a 20.
Right, but the 20 millimeter didn't come in until much later. And that's only because the city started planting a lot of trees and the 28 couldn't get us around. Like if they planted a tree smack dab, like
in millimeters, like the parking.
Right. There was more.
Kiosks got much bigger.
Right. As time went on, like it became more difficult to photograph some of these stores the way we like to photograph it. So we don't ever use a wide angle. The most would be a 20 millimeter, but that's very rare because that has some inherent distortion in it, which we don't like that much. I mean, we might use it and then make it so like we can crop out that part of the frame anyway later on. But it was always usually that 28. It's funny that you notice that because very few people ask us that, but that is the lens we use. It was always a Canon. We've had Canon from the very beginning. We upgraded our equipment as time went on because when we started the project, we didn't really have a lot of money for a camera. No. So we got like the basic Canon. I think when we started the project for storefronts, for graffiti, there was even a worse camera. But for storefronts, I think we were using an Elan. If I remember, it was the EOS Elan.
Yeah, and it was the Andre Agassi camera.
Right.
I remember that.
Yeah. Right. Then we stepped up to an Elan 7 NE. I remember the model exactly. Right. And then eventually we got their big
we were hesitant for digital for a long time.
Right, EOS 4, but that's our big they're still our 35 millimeter that we still use today. That the big heavy it's like a brick, like we've dropped it and nothing happens to it. Thank God. I mean, it's really, really, really well made. But the Canon doesn't even make that anymore. They stopped making film cameras, sadly. But yeah, it was always that 28 lens.
So, saying you're both you're a husband and wife team, and you are reminding me of another husband and wife team, Bernd and Hilla Bescher. Do you know of their work?
Yeah, we're big fans.
We're huge fans of them.
Did you go see their
cat, by the way?
Yeah, this is Opie, by the way. He has to get in the middle of things. So, did you see their show when they was in at the Met?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
And we have many of their books. We love.
We have two beautiful volumes.
Yeah, we love their work.
That's a great call.
And I mean, we always felt inspired by them.
Yep. And at you.
Right. Well, them in particular because they're a husband and wife team, which is a rarity. And I mean, not for their subject matter. It's a little different, but
even though we love it.
Well, even though we love it, and we have photographed, like I guess you could say, the industrial side of the tri-state area as well. Some abandonments of factories and things like that. But that's a lot of it's gone that we photographed.
So you feel like you're working on the same wavelength as they did, though. They're recording things that are well, they're doing stuff that's in operation too, but they're also doing things that are going to be gone soon, and you're walking in their footsteps.
Exactly. Yeah, it's wonderful that you're familiar with their work, because they've been a huge inspiration to us.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that was my first Met exhibit. Actually, was the Bescher one. So
yeah, when Ward came to visit me, we went to the Bescher exhibit, and so we geeked out there because of all the prints, and we did a show about them as well. So it was a lot of
we'll have to watch that. I mean, I didn't see that, because when you look at your podcast, it comes up only the most recent ones, but we'll have to look through your archive.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to that. That was actually a good one. I was noticing also that your book, the Storefronts book, the new one, is organized by borough. So you got Manhattan, Staten Island, and then by neighborhood as well, which I think is really cool. What led you guys to do it that way, to lay the book out that way? And did you notice any patterns, or which neighborhoods are changing the fastest?
For us, it was very important to keep it organized by borough and also neighborhoods within each borough, because to us, these mom and pop stores define the neighborhood.
Right.
You can know, for us, we know exactly what neighborhood we're in just by the type of stores that the neighborhood has.
Right.
And the borough, to an extent, yes, we can tell, because a lot of, like, I guess you could say the more time-worn ones would be in the outer boroughs, right, where maybe the store owners didn't have a lot of money to put into, like, I guess you could say modernizing their store. Right. And we don't necessarily like modernization of the storefront. Like, we like the rickety old Richard's Barber Shop that's in the book that has a falling off P. That's a great example. Like, it says, if there's these letters that say barber shop, and the P is like, falling off, like tipped. Like, if you'll see in the photo of it, any day you can just, fall off entirely, and it'll just be barber show.
Yeah. And we thought organizing that way allows, like, if me and Karla are going to go to another city, we would love to check out the storefronts, which we always end up doing when we travel. So we wanted the book to be organized kind of logically in a way. So if tourists are in the city, they could bring the book along and be like, oh, let me discover some of this stuff on my own. I'll start here at this store and see what's in that neighborhood.
Right, because for us, it was always about, and the whole reason we began the documentation process wasn't because, oh my God, yes, there was a rush to photograph things before they closed, but it was always about celebrating stores that were open, not stores that were closed, stores that were open, because we wanted people to be able to go there. And right. Once we started sharing them with the world, we realized, wow, you can really, especially nowadays with the power of social media, you have the power to help save a business by just sharing some photos. And I mean, I'm really proud to say that James and I have done that. We've single-handedly spearheaded, like, campaigns to help save some of the stores that we photographed. I mean, of course, then it would get picked up by other avenues and things like that. But the owner will say to us, "Oh my God, we're so grateful to you guys." And it's always been about that. It's the love. It's our way of giving back, I guess you could say. Of all the heartache and toil that these store owners have put into their store, the love they have for it, especially when it's a family-owned business passed down from generation to generation. But even when it's not, even if it's just one person doing everything by themselves, just the amount of work and everything that goes into it, and maybe not a lot of recognition,
right.
Just going there day to
right.
day and doing your thing. And
so, yeah, it was with that in mind that we tried to organize it.
Right. Organizing it would help people to find the store, go there. That's why we put the address. We're not trying to we want, go ahead, photograph it yourself, visit there. That's great. We want that. The more, the merrier, the better, because then the store has a chance of staying for future generations. Because a lot of people say, oh, I'm not worried about them. They own the building, which is like the number one reason why these stores close, certainly without any doubt, is because they don't own the building they're located in, and then the rent gets too high. I mean, this is not something that we've deduced. This is something that we gained from interviewing all the owners. They'll tell us right away. Like they tell us what their monthly rent is. They tell us how much it's being raised to. They tell us that they can't afford the new rent. Yeah, I mean, right. There's stores that the landlord 15 times, not like doubled, not tripled, which sounds bad enough. But I mean, I remember a store owner telling us, oh my God, they raised my rent 15 times. I was like, 15 times? That's like, you might as well just like show you the door, just like pack up all your stuff.
So, yeah, we know, and just going back to the mapping, we noticed that you were using Kenneth Jackson's The Encyclopedia of New York City as a source material for mapping the neighborhoods. Did that help you? Is that kind of key in telling the story or laying the book out in the way that you intended?
I mean, the encyclopedia was great because we used it as a reference to find out like a lot of the history of the neighborhood, especially when it had a change in ethnicity over the years, like one would replace the other. I mean, honestly, even in our own neighborhood of the East Village, like I didn't realize that the East Village, when we first moved there, had a huge German population, like enormous German population. I always associated a German neighborhood with the Upper East Side in particular, like what they would call it Kleindeutschland, around 3rd Avenue and 86th Street, where the Papaya King was, and then Schaller and Weber, and these German Heidelberg restaurant. All these places I was familiar with because I'm actually of German heritage, so I was always very interested in that. But I didn't realize, and because I mean, I guess it was before our time. We didn't realize like Lu Chow's on 14th Street. We didn't know those places existed because they had already closed. And the encyclopedia was great because it gave us a lot of insight into what the neighborhood was like before we even started photographing it. Like, and maybe there wasn't any remnants left of, what stores were there then. And then we would start looking for, little telltale signs, maybe an old ghost sign or something like hidden underneath an awning. And that's always fun for us to do too.
You were talking before about the stores being owned by people, and that the buildings being owned by people, excuse me, and that affecting how their lifestyle would be. And I recognize with these stores that the people are in it for not necessarily commerce. Of course, it's their business, but it's a lifestyle, and you're capturing in the outside of the store. By showing the store, you're capturing a bit of their lifestyle. And what's interesting is today in the Times there was some pictures of I think it was in San Francisco, the story about stores closing, like their business districts closing, and they were showing lots of pictures of these closed storefronts. And what struck me about those pictures, they were just photographed by the person who was writing it. Struck me is there was no personality in any of those stores, and they were all just closed. You couldn't tell really one from the other, and they might have had some decals on them. But you're capturing with your photographs like a portrait of the store and a portrait of the person who owns it, and it's a lifestyle. It's not just commerce. And is that kind of what attracts you also to these storefronts?
Definitely. For us, they're works of art in and of themselves. And that's why when we kind of developed the way that we wanted to photograph them, we wanted to make the store the hero. And that it's another reason why we didn't have, in most cases, somebody in front of the store, because then it would your eye would almost always immediately go to the person before the store. Right. Because that's just the way people are. People are always want to look at other people. I mean, that's just, I guess, a common common thing, when you're looking at a painting or a photograph, you're always seeking out a person. Right. So for us, we wanted to make the store the hero, because it was about the store, it was about the storefront, and in a large part, the community that would be surrounding the storefront and really a part of the storefront, because the stores to us are often, like I would say, ad hoc community centers.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, that there's always a cast of characters.
Right. They play a very important role in the community, whether people realize it or not. I remember we met a grocer. He had I guess you could call it kind of like a deli. And he told us that he would take packages for his neighbors, the people that lived upstairs or the people that lived next door to him, because he was open early in the morning through pretty late at night. Right. And maybe they worked 2 or 3 jobs and they were never home to get a package, and he would take them for them. And he didn't have to do that. He didn't charge them or anything like that. I mean, that was just such a nice neighborly thing to do. And it's just those interactions. And that's why we try to tell people, go into a store, say hi to the owner. You might be pleasantly surprised. You can have a nice conversation, even make a friend.
And the way we photographed it, you can almost feel the neighborhood around it, you're standing there, and we've had people say to us, and that's what we tried to do, was to take anyone in the stores. You can say, I kind of almost, before I even came to New York, I kind of almost imagined what this neighborhood looked like and where it was, and
right. Even though for the most part we cropped the store.
There's so much information.
Instead of shooting it across the street and showing the whole building or something like that, it's the store. When we can, we leave a little bit of the surround. Is there a window above the store, the brickwork, whatever it is, just so you can get a feel for it. There's all these little
cues about the neighborhood and the street, and in that simple little frame.
Right, like Katie's Candy Store
that we mentioned earlier. Our first storefront
that we mentioned earlier.
If you look at the photo in the book, there's a rope with a pulley on the left-hand side, just dangling in the frame.
Right.
And while we were talking to Katie, an older woman came home, well, probably our age, came home, and they have a plastic bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket.
Like a paint bucket.
And she put her groceries in there, and someone pulled it up the stairs for her. And that's what that rope was hanging there for. And we leave those little...
Right. It's ingenious. It was it was perfect. You live on a 5th floor, walk up.
In the faded Mylar balloons all folded up and crinkled up in the window.
Right.
Okay, so there's probably a lot of families here. In that part of Brooklyn, they have these big birthday parties. And wouldn't you say? And
right. Well, she was in Bed-Stuy, and Bed-Stuy changed a lot. And I guess at the time, more people were moving in that would maybe celebrate quinceañera, things like that.
Exactly.
So she would
pinata candy.
Exactly.
And stuff, and you can tell all that little detail. And that's what we love about the plants on the windowsill above the store. The people care about their apartment, even though it's run down, and they may not have a lot, but
so that's important to capture a lot of. Sorry, I was going to say it's important for you to capture these details in the store, because they help tell the story without actually telling a story. I mean, they're visual storytelling things in your storefronts, right?
Exactly. Like Richard's Barbershop. If you look at that photo, and I know that one so well because it's one of my favorites, with that letter P falling off. If you look carefully at the sign, the person who painted this, who also painted around the lettering, took took an actual scissor from inside the store, like the shears that he used,
and spray painted over them.
And spray painted over them,
made the silhouette of them on the sign.
Right.
And I can just imagine him cleaning the paint off afterwards. And the whole business.
Right. It's not a hand-drawn shears. It's actually he took a big pair of shears.
And it's in an area where the barber shop is.
Right, and then he took a big comb, like a big oversized comb, and then and spray painted that. It just these little details, if you just were walking by, probably you wouldn't even notice that, like on the sign itself. But it's those little things
Yeah,
that
the
we
owners
love.
love it when we mention like stuff like that.
Right.
Do you-
But we
do you
always
notice-
saw the little details.
Do you notice the details after you photograph them? Like you look at the prints and it's just saying, "Oh, I didn't see that when I took the picture." Or is it like anything
First,
surprise you?
Sometimes,
but now
but
we're so attuned. Like,
yeah, now we're sticklers for the details. Like we always look. We, like I said, I even look underneath to see if there's some old sign. Like if they have an awning, is there something underneath the
right,
awning?
sometimes they use the old, they just put the new sign right over the old.
Right.
Right.
And you could still see remnants of that.
Yeah, you know, I resonate a lot with what you guys are doing because I'm doing something similar in my neighborhood. I live in Kensington in Brooklyn, so on Ocean Parkway and on
Sure.
Cortellia Road, and I walk around and I do a lot of photographs, and especially of a lot of the old places. And I was doing this. It's just because I'm a New Yorker also, and I'm sort of concerned about the same things you guys are in terms of preserving in some way what makes New York so unique, and a pleasure to walk around and seeing these places disappear is heart wrenching. And I understand that because people, you know, this is progress, quote unquote progress, right? You know, and this has been happening, you know, since New York began. But still, you know, what attracts us to these neighborhoods is like in some of your pictures, like the Katz's Delicatessens and these mom and pop stores is what brings us to the neighborhoods in the first place. And to see them shut down after the gentrification comes in and like, well, that's what we came to the neighborhood for in the first place, are these old places, and now they're gone, turned into, you know, chain stores, and we don't really care about it. But, you know, I did read that you said about 80% of the stores roughly that you've taken pictures of are no longer existing. Is that still true?
Right.
From
In this book, in this Storefront NYC book, on this latest book, well over half of the stores that we included are still open as of like today, you know, as of September 2023. But some of them closed even in the process of us putting together the book. From the time that we submitted the photo, like, you know, because this is like, you know, obviously the book is now printed and everything like that, but we had to give in the photos last year to make it for the pub date of this year. And we lost a couple of places in that short time of just getting the book out there. I mean, one of them that stands out is in Little Italy was Oliva. It's a dairy, you know, like they would make their own homemade mozzarella, and it also became kind of like great place to get sandwiches as well.
They made a nice sandwich.
Great sandwiches, big enough James and I would eat one and we could share it. It would be a meal for two. They just couldn't make it anymore. I mean, they're really a victim of the pandemic, and B, coupled with rising rents. Little Italy especially got hit very, 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 very hard because a lot of the businesses there are tourist driven.
Right.
You know, they make the bulk of their money depending on tourists coming in and visiting that neighborhood, because the Italians don't really live anymore in Little Italy of Manhattan.
Right. The old residents coming back.
Right. The residents that used to live there, and the families that, like the third and fourth generation families of whoever used to live there back in the 1900s, because that place goes back so long, was well over 100 years old, would make the pilgrimage from Long Island, New Jersey, Westchester, Pennsylvania. I mean, far away places, but they would go there just to get like a little taste of the old neighborhood and the taste that they grew up with. And when they were, I mean, it's a food business, so technically they could have stayed open, you know, as per the laws that New York State had required for businesses being open during the pandemic, but there was no one there. I mean, we were we were in New York the whole pandemic. We never left. We were there every single day, not even a day did we leave. And I mean, I could tell you there was nobody, nobody walking around. I mean, there was nobody walking down in Times Square. I mean, we there was nobody walking anywhere.
The Clover Deli is closed.
Right. The Clover Deli, sadly, one of the reasons they closed as well was it was pandemic related, but the family did own the building. They were lucky enough that the family owned the building. So they didn't have that to worry about, like as far as like that they had to pay rent, but they still had to pay taxes and everything like that. The people think, oh, they're set. They own the building, like that's just like a given then, like the business can never be in danger because they own the building. But it doesn't work that way, because owning a building, especially a building that has apartments and stuff above it, there's other things like, you have to pay taxes, there's upkeep here and this and that. It's not it's not the save all. Of course, it's a great thing. I mean, and it definitely is the very reason why some of the places that are in our book, the new book, Storefront NYC, including Russ and Daughters. I mean, Nikki Russ Fetterman, the owner will tell you, I mean, thank God for her great-great-grandfather who had the foresight to keep the family business, sold their family home during the Great Depression just to save the business, did not sell that building. Right. But if he had, she's the first one to say we wouldn't be here today. Right. Katz's Delicatessen, the same thing. I mean, they own the building. Oh, more power to them. That's how they could survive. But
we've interviewed owners who they've slept above their ovens when they had no heat in their house.
Right. Wow. But Glasser's Bake Shop in the Upper East Side, that's in the book. Sadly, they did own the building, but they closed. This was pre-pandemic. But they closed for an entirely different reason. Bakery business, you have to get up at like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning to start baking all the stuff that you're going to sell that day. And they tried and tried and tried. The two brothers that ran it, they had the kids. The kids tried. They tried a nephew, and they didn't want to put in those long hours.
We spent the day in Glasser's Bakery around the holidays, Christmas time.
Watching them make a gingerbread house.
They're famous for their gingerbread houses.
Right.
And to see this guy, like literally slaving, like making gingerbread houses, waiting on customers,
shingles,
doing the little details, making time for us to talk to, knowing all his customers. I mean, just the amount of work we spent with that one day was
It broke our heart when he told us that he was going to close. That because he told us, my nephew, and we met his nephew when we were there. Because we go back many, many times. We photographed that place many times. The photographs to us, it's like a Manet.
Like haystacks.
His haystacks. Just because like the photo is in the book doesn't mean that was the one and only time that we would photograph it. No.
Let's get it in the snow. Let's get it in the rain.
We would go back and get it like, okay, let's take it on, the winter time. Will it look different than the summertime? Changing window displays and things like that. But that bake shop in particular, it was very sad that they closed, but they just couldn't find a family member that was interested in the business. It just didn't work out.
Yeah. So with all this rich history, I mean, there's so many stories. I mean, it's unbelievable, actually, and that you can retain them all too, because I'm not sure I could. So we've discovered that you give talks to libraries and historical societies, and I'm just wondering, what does that do for you? Is there something that you really enjoy about telling these societies and sharing this with the public? I mean, clearly you are with us. Like I know so much more now than I ever possibly could have. I was just wondering, is there something special for you in giving these public talks?
We love it because, like I said, even the photos themselves is our way of giving back to the community, but we like to go a step further and share them with other people in the hopes that they are inspired. If you want to go save a store. If you're passionate about a store, you don't have to live in New York. Wherever you live in the world, there's mom and pop stores, and I'm sure they're in danger wherever you are. The number one way to save them is by shopping there. Right. So to us, to help spread the word.
It's a better way of doing things.
Right. To
support your neighborhood, to get to know people.
Exactly. To spread the word that, especially in this day and age with the power of social media, that you can help save a store, that you don't just have to watch it close. Maybe you can find someone to take the business over. It's a real passion of ours. And we are also, members of these different groups. It's just our way of giving back to the community. I mean, I feel like so many of them, especially the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation, and now it's called Village Preservation, but we're members there. They do a lot of campaigning to help save the stores, especially when they're, been around for a long time and have a particularly good story. But we even give workshops. We've done that. We've done workshops with other photographers, trying to teach others how to not really teach, but just give them helpful tips.
Try to light the passion in them.
Pointers on
so
the best.
That goes to the next question, actually, which is, what pointers would you have for someone who wants to do something like what you're doing? What are your guidelines? What do you tell your students on these outings?
We always tell people, do what you love, because the love will come through in the photo. Right. So when you're thinking about taking a photo, if you have a feeling about it, then take it, because that feeling, that it will be conveyed in the photo. I mean, we always tell people that they're just starting out with photography, try to develop a style. We definitely have a style. And like I mentioned, that linear approach, you don't have to copy our style. I mean, that's fine. It's, right. We feel flattered if you do, but, try to develop a style. That's something that just happens overnight. It took us a long time of taking these photos to now we can just walk right up to a storefront. And I mean, it will be book ready. That photo will be book ready. I mean, there's not really much we have to do to it.
Unless there's a parking problem. When we first started out, I had a Con Ed vest and a helmet and a couple cones I would carry around.
Right. We would
block off the parking.
Right. We'd be like, no.
Like when someone pulled out, I'd throw the cones down and I'd just be waving
right. No. We can't have a truck parked in front of this.
That's great. That's fantastic.
People are like, the people hung out with us, you guys are absolutely insane.
Right. We would
sounds like a misdemeanor to me.
Right. Be patient. Be patient.
And do what you love.
Right.
Because I remember reading a Bob Dylan book, and Bob Dylan said in the book, he's like, make sure you like the songs that you write, because you're going to be singing them your whole life. And make sure you like what you're going to photograph, because 30 years I've been looking at storefront photos and I still can't get enough. It's
But take a photo of what you love, what you feel inspired, and also be patient. Wait for that right light that you feel will highlight whatever you're photographing in the best possible way. But that being said, be patient, but don't be patient.
Right.
Don't put it off, because we made the mistake so many times that
will go back.
That will go back. There's almost no excuse now, because at the very least, take the photo with your cell phone. Everybody usually has a phone on them that has a camera. So, I mean, if that's not your preferred way of photographing it, who cares? If that's all you have with it, then take the photo with that, because it may be gone tomorrow. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's honestly true. So, take the photo today, but be patient as well. two things that are like the opposite ends.
Don't take anything for granted. We took CBGBs for granted. We took
Right.
Those are some of the last things we shot.
Right, CBGBs. I mean, if you look at the date that we took the photo, I mean,
one of the last.
James and I went to CBGBs, like countless concerts we saw that. We were really into the punk rock scene too, but we never thought to take a photo of it. I mean,
because you just assumed it would always be there.
Right, we took it for granted, and the photo that's in the book, the only reason that we have that photo is we had 2 frames left on a roll. And I wanted to develop that roll because we had been in Brooklyn, and we used to get our film developed at a place called Alkit, and it was on Park Avenue South.
Yeah.
I think it was Park Avenue South and maybe 17th Street. I think
somewhere right in
something right in there, either 16th or 17th, maybe it was 18th. Yeah. Well, it was right there, but it was definitely
up from where Max's Kansas
right. I think it might have been 18th because I think it might have been the same by Old Town Bar. But
right.
At any rate, it was right there on Park Avenue South, and we were on our way to go to Alkit. We had gotten off the subway, and we had 2 frames left, and we were walking down the Bowery
just to fill up a roll.
On our way to Alkit, and I was just like, you know what? 2 frames, whatever, we'll just get the roll developed. And then I'm like, oh, wait, 2 frames? We'll just take CBGBs. Like, yeah, why not? We're here. We got the 2 frames. We're going to waste the 2 frames anyway, because I would have just advanced it and given it to them.
We shot it.
And we took those photos, and thank God we did, because I think it was not even maybe a year later that they closed. So maybe we would never.
That's what we tell students. It's just.
Right. Maybe we would never have taken it because, like I said, we had taken that place for granted and we never thought to photograph it. So, yeah, don't take it.
So I'm on a final question on this. And this is sort of putting on your future, look into the future glasses, hat, whatever you want to call it. I think about this, like, for us who are New Yorkers, right? And we've seen the changes over the years. I mean, I was born and raised in New York, Manhattan. I live in Brooklyn. And, I go back to my old neighborhood and I don't recognize it. There are things I do recognize, but a lot of stuff I don't. And, I never thought of, I grew up with my camera and like you said, we take these things for granted. We walk by them and assume they're going to be there forever. CBGBs was certainly something I thought would be around forever. Even in my neighborhood, there was a local barber shop and he ended up closing because of the pandemic. And I thought he was going to be around forever. I don't know why. I just thought that way. But like, let's go into the future, 50, 100 years from now, we're talking to photographers, both of us as in groups, and telling them to do these things and to not take it for granted. But given the way cities are changing, I mean, this is not just unique to New York. It's all the cities. Especially the older ones, in terms of storefronts and things that are important for us today. What do you think in 50 years it might look like? Do you think things that are going to be worth documenting? Because we feel like right now, we're all look like we're the same generation, so we feel like what we're doing now is documenting these things, and it's important to us. And I imagine this stuff has been happening for a zillion years, but for some reason, for me, I look into the future and I say, whatever's being made now, this new stuff is not worth documenting, but am I just being, in my own space and my own biases towards the place that I grew up in and what I love? And are there things today that are current to the younger people that are going to be worth documenting, that 50 years from now we'll look back and say, this was a time that was great? What do you think? And it's kind of a big question, but I'm really curious about it because of us, we're recording what we like in their history. Is this going to be something that continues, or we're just like, no, that's it. That's end of nostalgia.
I think absolutely that there are worth things recording. I understand what you're saying, that like, okay, I like these things that they are today, and you're not a fan of the big modernization, because we are not either. I mean, to us, when we see a store that just has a glass facade and has no character, has nothing in the window, like these chain, I won't even say the name of the chain, these chain drug stores that open up. if you look at our photo in the East Village of block drugstores, you can look it up. It's in the beginning of the book because it's the East Village. That is your quintessential mom and pop drugstore. And it happens to be the drugstore that James and I go to. Carmine Palermo, the owner, he's our pharmacist, and he's the nicest person that you could ever meet. We've been in there, and somebody will come in and they don't have enough money to pay for their prescription, like heart medication. And he will say to them, don't worry, just give me a few dollars and then give me the rest when you get your check next month or whatever it is. You know, I mean, there's no way in the world that your, chain drugstore is going to say that to this person.
Right. So
but that being said, these stores that go up now that are part of, like, I guess you could call these monster developments, that where it's just this big glass box and it has no character. You don't even know what in the world they're selling in there. If it didn't have a tiny little sign, you wouldn't have any clue. I mean, it looks like nothing. It looks like you just walk right past it. It looks like an office building. I mean, it could be anything. And I'm still hopeful, even though that's happening, I'm still hopeful, and James will say the same thing, that there'll always be interesting mom and pop stores to photograph, especially in New York City, because many neighborhoods have places that have tiny little footprints. And what I mean by that is that the store is only, 300 square feet, like this tiny little box. And no big chain store is ever going to be wanting to be open in a tiny little space like that. They just can't possibly put all their stuff that they want to sell or their robots that, like, then there's not even people checking you out anymore. You have to do self-checkout. There's no interaction. You just, hold up your smartphone and hit Apple Pay or whatever you do. And, you don't have to interact with anybody. You just pick something off the shelf and then there you go, you leave. And these places will always be around because that's not the kind of retail atmosphere that they want. So we're hopeful that even if a store closes today, and there's been a lot of closures, especially in our neighborhood, the Lower East Side, East Village, there's a lot of empty storefronts. I'm still hopeful that it gives an opportunity for somebody new that maybe they're new to New York. They just moved here, whatever their story is.
We've seen
it many times. People that have this dream, I'm going to come to New York and I'm going to make it. Like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. That's, the saying. And
like
they
the song
got this
says.
in their head, and they find this little place and a rent that hopefully they can afford, and they do it. And that gives us such hope. And I feel like that will always be there.
Yeah, I think New York is always going to be an exciting place. Right. I think there's still, like, when I came to the city at age 14, I think there's 14-year-olds out there now that's just as exciting to them as it was to me back then, even though it's remarkably different.
Right. Like, his Times Square is a totally different.
Right.
Of what
totally different.
But like, we photograph sneaker stores now, and that's exciting to that age group. And like, I'm pretty confident that New York will just keep kind of reinventing a way to, get people to be excited.
Right.
Honestly.
We're hopeful for the future. Definitely. Although, we realize that a lot of stores have closed, and it is very, very sad, but always hopeful for the future. We like to think of our project, Storefront NYC.
As a celebration.
Celebration, right. It's not
this kind of morose project where, like, you hear minor piano keys playing and there's rainy puddles and kind of like this downbeat, like we like to say, we like to say, not woe is me. We like to say, no, these places are still here. Get them while you can. Go out, explore, celebrate them while you can. And that's what we kind of want the book to impart.
Right.
That's great.
Loss.
Right. The joy and
it's kind of like an Irish wake. I don't know if any of you guys know what an Irish wake is or have been to one. An Irish wake, everyone just has a big party and remembers the good times with the person and stuff. And
right, everyone's drinking and laughing, and you're having a good time.
So yeah, some are going to close. Hopefully, some will open, but let's celebrate the ones that are still here and remember.
Oh, that sounds a great place for us to wrap up. That's the idea of hope is a wonderful thing to keep in ourselves when we're doing this stuff. So the book, when is it coming out?
September 19th is the official drop date. So we're really, really excited for.
All right, that's only a few days from now, so that's great. And the publisher is Prestel, right?
Yep.
All right, so we'll include links to the Amazon, so people can get it on Amazon and your website on our show notes. Can you just let everybody know where they can find you in the internets?
Oh, perfect. Yes. We're at www.jamesandkarlamurray.com, which it's a long website, but it's just our name spelled out, JamesandKarla.
Or Instagram,
right?
James and Karla.
And even easier, Instagram at James and Karla, just spelling out AND between the James and the Karla with a K. And YouTube as well. YouTube in particular, even though we're photographers, we added video to our repertoire because we wanted to reach a wider audience in helping spread the word about these mom and pop stores. And our walks in particular, not all of them, but a lot of them, we particularly highlight small businesses. And, we do that. All this is just done for the love of it. The project has always been for the love of these mom and pop stores, and we hope that they stay around for as long as the owner wants to stay in business.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you guys on the show, and it was great to have your book in front of us, and especially me. I'm so glad because there's so much in there that's in my history as well, but. We really appreciate you spending time with us and telling us about your book and your stories on our show. So,
thanks for having us.
Oh yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time and having us on your show. It was really wonderful to speak.
Thank you, James and Karla.